Hello friends, so in this video we will learn about states in Jetpack Compose and a couple of things that we need to know before working with states because states is a core in Jetpack Compose. So the concept of state is used widely with Jetpack Compose widget. So we have to learn and we have to see that what are the things that we should care about while using states in Jetpack Compose. So here we have created this sample application. So here is the running app. We have this text called as with a text uh, counter text written on it, and we have a spacer, and then we have another counter uh, composable function. So this also contains a text, and we are passing a counter integer to it, and we are simply showing it to the UI, okay? And this is all we have in this project. So as you can see, this project is running and the counter is 0 because obviously we have declared the counter as 0, which we are passing over here. And this counter text is this one. So now, what if we want to change this counter based on some time with like every second we need to increment this. So let's do it. So let's use a launch defect and maybe unit over here. So let's do a while loop. So while true, we just have to increment the counter plus plus, and we'll also add a delay of 1000. So what will happen is this will keep on running forever and with a delay of 1000 milliseconds, which means with a delay of 1 second, this will keep on incrementing the counter. So will anything happen now? So let's try running our application and see what happens. Will this increase the value of this counter or not? So nothing, right? There's nothing on the screen. It still shows, uh, sorry, it still shows 0 and counter text, even when this is running. And this is obviously running in the background, and the value of the counter is actually getting incremented. So you can even check it by attaching a debugger over here. So, so see, this counter is incremented and the current value is 23. We'll run it again and then it's 24 and it will keep on increasing, right? So then why this is not reflecting? Because obviously this is just a variable, and how would this counter know that something is changing? So here when we prefer using states, right? So let's try using state over here. So let's see. So by remember, and here we don't need a key, so we'll use mutable state of, and we'll simply add this value as 0, and obviously we need to import this. Yep. So now what we have done here is we've converted our integer to a state. So once this is done, and if we now try to run the application, so now as this is converted to a state and we are passing it over here, so this the text is now uh, does know about the states being getting updated, and it will keep on redrawing itself, right? So now the thing we should care about here is that whenever this state changes, what exactly is getting impacted over here? Okay. So to do this, what we can do is we can simply use this layout inspector tool. So simply click over here and you can see your device over here. And here you can see your whole UI and things are getting updated over here with some color flashing on the screen. So also from this particular section, you have to keep this show composable counts as on. Okay, so you have to keep this as turned on, and now here you can see the all your composable functions written over here. So here you can see this is also getting increased. So now what exactly is this? So if you hover over here, so you can see number of times this composable has been recomposed, which means that how many times this composable is getting recomposed. So but The composable is obviously the parent, right? This is this particular composable function that is getting recomposed, right? But we just want uh, this to get recomposed, right? Because obviously nothing other than this is getting changed. So now we can expand this as well, and we can see that in a column, which is this column, we have a text, a spacer, and a container. So here's this text, this spacer, and this container, right? So now, as you can see that there's also a number getting updated over here, uh, right, to the right of this text, right? So why this number is getting updated and not here? So if you hover to this particular icon, it will tell you that number of times recomposition for this component has been skipped. So what exactly this means is that this text's value, that is this counter text, is never getting changed, right? So the compose will know about this thing, that the value is never getting changed. So it will never recompose this particular uh, function, right? This composable function. And it will only recompose the function, which is this counter, which is getting uh, uh, which whose value is getting changed every time at every particular second, right? So here, if you expand this, you can see that the text is getting updated. So how compose works is, so if any child widget is changing, right, it will pass the information to its parent, which is this column, right? And the column will pass the information to its parent, which is greeting. And that's why you can see that greetings recomposition count is also getting increased. And any widget, or you can say any composable com uh, function inside it, will also get recomposed, right? So now let's do some changes to our code base to see uh, one more interesting scenario. Okay, so let's try to have another counter over here. Maybe we need to just simply copy this, paste it over here. So we have a space, another counter, but here let's define another variable. Maybe call it where um, counter 2. Okay, and we can take it as an integer. Okay, or rather than integer, we can simply copy this, and we can use state itself. Okay, so now let's increment this counter as well over here, and now simply use this counter over here. Okay, so counter and counter 2, and what we are doing is we have this counter as a state, right? And we are incrementing this counter as well. So let's try running our application, and let's see what happens. So see, both of our counters are getting updated, right? So that's one of the intended behavior. But what if we simply make this a general variable with the type integer? Okay, what will happen now? We are still incrementing this, right? But will this counter will ever know about this? Let's find out. So let's run our application. Let's see what happens. So now, as this was very clear that this will never get updated, because obviously this is not what we call it, a state, right? So how this will never know about anything that is getting updated. But is this getting recomposed or not? Let's find out by looking at the layout inspector, which is obviously a great tool, and this helps in many scenarios where you don't even know what is happening internally. So let's find out over here. So I attached the layout inspector, and see the counts are getting updated. Now let's simply open it. So see, this is the counter, this is getting recomposed, and for this counter it is skipping the recomposition because the value is never changing, right? But we know that the value is changing over here every time. Then why it is thinking that the value is never changing? Because the thing is that whenever any state is getting updated, okay, and any widget using that particular state is getting updated, it will transmit the information to its parent and it will transmit it to its parent. So that's why greeting is getting recomposed every time. And whenever greeting is getting recomposed, this particular variable will get reinitialized to 0, right? Even if it's getting updated every time, but still on every recomposition, it's getting reinitialized to 0, and that's why this value is never getting changed, right? So now what will happen if we simply cut this particular part and paste it over here? So now this is outside of this composable function, right? So this is, you can call it a global variable now. So now what will happen? Will this counter show us the updated value, or the result will be same? Let's find out. So let's run the application. Hmm. And now, as you can see, that both the values are getting updated. Now, even when this particular variable is not even a state, still this is getting updated. That's because one of the widget, one of the other child is using a state, and that state is getting updated. And that's why the parent view will get recomposed. And whenever the parent view will get recomposed, all the child views will get recomposed if the value they are using is getting updated, right? Even if that value is not a state, right? So now this is a global value variable. So this will never get reinitialized to 0 on this recomposition. So this counter will keep on incrementing, and whenever this widget will recompose, it will recompose the parent greeting, and internally the greeting will recompose, pass the information to the compiler to actually um, uh, recompose any other widget whose value is getting updated, right? So even if we open the layout inspector, so here you will be able to see that in real time. So see here, now this counter is also getting recomposed every time, right? Both the counters are getting recomposed. So now what will happen if we remove this counter, which is a state? If we simply don't increment this, what will happen now? Will this still show us the updated value or not? Let's find out. So see, there's no updates anymore, even when this counter is getting incremented, right? Because this counter is not a state, and the state is never getting updated. So the value of counter will always stay 0. So if a state is not getting updated, none of the child is using a state now. This is using obviously a state, but the value of state is same every time. So this will never ask the parent to recompose. So if it is not recomposing, even if this value is changing, right? Even if this counter 2 is changing, none of the childs will recompose, because childs or any composable function will never recompose itself on global variable changes, or sorry, on any variable change other than a state. Okay, so they need a state to be getting updated in order to recompose. Okay, so this is all about the states and how they work internally, how the recomposition happen, and how you can use this fantastic layout inspector tool to actually know about recompositions. Because whenever we are developing apps, we sometimes miss these kind of details, and we end up doing multiple level of recomposition for the widgets which we even don't want to recompose, and there cer are certain number of bugs that can arise due to this behavior. So you have to keep these things in mind, right? So that's all for this video. So if you like the video, you can subscribe to our channel, and we keep on posting such kind of videos which we find might be useful for you. So hit the like button and do subscribe. So thanks, and see you in the next video.